What's up, everyone? Kevin Sella here with another race breakdown. Last couple weeks, we've looked at Jakob Ingebrigtsen and Latensepet Gidey. Today, we're going to look at Sifan Hassan's 10,000 meter world record, a race that's been lost a bit in all the craziness that was 2021 for two main reasons. One, Hassan's record only lasted 2 days before Latensepet Gidey on the same track ran about 5 seconds faster and moved her down from number one to number two before we even had time to adjust the record books. And two, Sifan Hassan's season in 2021 was just filled with highlights, so much so that a world record that only lasted 2 days isn't in the top line of highlights when you look at her resume. Obviously, you go and you look at the attempted triple that she had at the Olympics, where she got 2 golds and a bronze, all the battles in the 1500 against Faith Kipyegon, quick times all across the board. But I wanted to pay homage to this record because it only lasted for 2 days, but it was a fun one to watch and does give us a glimpse at the future of the women's 10,000 and the women's distance as a whole. Let's go back here before we even start this race here. I just want to show you ultimate power move by Sifan Hassan. Last one to the line. She knows that they're waiting on her. She knows the gun's not going to go off until the world record holder is going to be in place. So there she's off. Sifan Hassan in Hengelo to attempt this world record. And it was very clear early on what the assignment was. The world record going in 29:17 from Almaz Ayana. That was set at the Rio Olympic Games. And Hassan, with the benefit of pacemakers for a little bit and pacing lights on the track, locked in at about 35 seconds for 200, 70 seconds for 400. A little bit loose with that in terms of there were some 70 points, which we'll talk about the conversion chart in a second. But this race, by and large, was Sifan Hassan, a pure race against the clock, a pure race of her running with the lights and just following along 35 after 35 after 35 after 35. She did speed up at the end in that fantastic last kilometer, but this was one of those races where you could just copy, paste, 400 after 400 after 400. There were not huge fluctuations in the pace until she got to 9 kilometers. So we're looking here at the end of the first lap, and as I mentioned, 35 for 200 and 70 seconds for the 400. There she is. Let's flip over to the pacing chart that I cooked up over here. So let's take a look at this, and if you watch the Latensepet Gidey illustration on the 5K world record, this looks a bit familiar now. It was a bit faster for Gidey, but 70 seconds gets you 2:55 for the K, 8:45 through 3K, 14:35 through 5K. Obviously, that charts out to a 29:10, which is below 29:17, the world record coming in. So this gives her a little bit of wiggle room because they're not even 70s. They're 70 point something. So those tenths of a second add up after each lap. But this would give her enough wiggle room if she held 70s to go underneath that record. She's going to go far beyond that. But you can see why this makes sense as a plan going in. She's behind two pacemakers here early on, two more behind her. Again, perhaps getting some benefit of people on both sides of her, like we saw Kipchoge do in that last sub-2 attempt in Vienna, where he had pacers on either side and not just on one side. But really, when you're going this quick, there's not much help you're going to get at this level in women's distance running. So any sort of help you're going to get is going to be fleeting. So you take as much advantage as you possibly can. Saw 145 there about through 600, another 35-second 200-meter split for Hassan. We're actually going to speed this up and cut to some key splits along the way, just because this race basically just turned into this. Sifan Hassan clipping off 70 after 70, 255 to 256 per K over and over and over again. The only difference is in a little bit drops off, doesn't have much help to go along with her. So 220 would be target pace. Sifan Hassan, 23 laps to go. I'll just stop it there. 220.9, again, unofficial, a little bit north of 70 seconds, but there's that buffer there between 29:10 and 29:17. Okay, so here we are. We're about to the 2K mark, and Pacer trying to give her some help here. Sifan Hassan goes by saying, hey, it's time to get going. Pacer responds, trying to do her a solid here and get as much pacing as she can. But really, this is Sifan Hassan having to do most of this thing solo. I don't know what the plan was, if it was somebody could go to actually 3K, but pacers get her past 2K and a little bit more before Hassan. You can see she's chomping at the bit at this point, and the pacers doing more harm than good. She's going to go around her, and now it's going to be Hassan to the front the rest of the way. So basically, 8,000 meters is going to be just a solo effort for Hassan. So that lasted about 6 or so minutes of a 29-minute race. It's better than nothing, but when we look at ways to drop this record under potentially 29 minutes, there's a clear spot that can be improved upon in the future, just figuring out how to get pacers. But it's very hard to get pacers. Why? Let's take a look at just the women's 5,000 meter best of list from last year. This list is season best. So she's running, Sifan Hassan is running essentially at 14:35 pace. This year, 2021, there's only been 13 women, and Sifan Hassan is one of them, who have run 14:35 or quicker. So the amount of people who could actually pace Sifan Hassan in this race is very small. And that's going to continue to become an issue the faster this 10,000 goes between her and Gidey. At a certain point, you just run out of people who are willing to pace you for a world record attempt. We're at 5K, coming up on 5K right here. Again, 14:35 would have been 29:10. So you see she's a little bit outside of it at 5K, where all those tenths of the seconds are adding up. 14:38. That's still 29:16 pace. We get a good look of every single kilometer split there. 14:38, still 29:16 pace. And you have to feel pretty good about Hassan because 29:16 under where she needs to be, sliding off a bit. So this was the first set of kilometers here. 256, 256, 255 with an 847.9, 255, and then another 255. So things are locked in there at that 255 pace. We're going to go ahead now to this last kilometer, which is where the record really was shattered. And for Sifan Hassan's sake, I'm guessing she probably started, she wished in retrospect she could have made the move a little bit earlier, not just at the final kilometer, but maybe 8 or 9K, because when you drop 10 seconds off that last K, maybe there was more in the tank there. But this is Sifan Hassan in the last couple minutes here. She goes through 9,000 meters, 26:21. So she basically needs to run another 255 or so, and she'd be fine. A little bit under that, and she'd be fine. But she goes well beyond that here and is going to end up running, 10 seconds quicker, lapping people at this point, which probably is welcome for her. But again, not something that's going to be really advantageous when you're trying to cut time. And we have 2 to go here. I wanted to do a little compare and contrast here with Hassan and Gidey's world record attempts. Hometown crowd getting excited there. Let's look at this matchup here. So, as I mentioned, both set in Hengelo, date 2 days apart. Hassan, June 6th, Gidey, June 8th. Pace lights, yes, for both. Remember, Gidey's was in the Ethiopian trial, so a little bit different dynamic there. And I think that played out in the manner in which these two women ran the race. They both had pacers. Hassan's lasted, as I mentioned, a bit past 6 minutes. Gidey got a little farther with company. Gidey also had a couple laps where someone was right on her shoulder because it was a trials race. Now, that person wasn't doing any of the work, cutting the wind or anything like that, but perhaps it was just enough to distract her, keep her going mentally for a few more minutes. Just having somebody there makes it feel like a race setup. Again, that can be helpful for some people, and perhaps some people find that annoying and actually makes it harder to break a record. But just a couple differences between the two. But here's the major difference. First 5K and second 5K. Gidey goes 14:42 and then a huge negative split with a 14:18 to go to 29:01. Again, I rounded those splits a bit. Hassan, much more even with that last K being 10 seconds quicker. Gidey, I believe, the 14:42 is a reflection that this was a trials race and there was still something to lose. So I don't think she wanted to put too much out there in case something went wrong, because the whole idea was, hey, let's qualify for the Olympics. Ends up with the world record as well too, but perhaps a different approach. And if Gidey had just a straight up world record attempt, there's an opportunity there to cut time. But the main issue, the main thing keeping this from going sub 29, because we obviously know it's possible. When you watch someone negative split by 10 seconds in the last K, like Hassan, you know it's possible. You saw how Gidey closed that final 5K. You've seen what Gidey has done in a half marathon. It's only a matter of time before sub 29 happens. The main issue is, hey, can you get pacers out there? Can you set up the right race for it to happen? These two together doing it, I'm not sure if that will ever come to fruition. That would be sensational. I think it's funny that Sifan Hassan looks behind her when she's up by minutes and minutes at this point. And the only thing, maybe she's looking at the lights. I think she's looking at the lights, actually, trying to figure out, gauging her effort as to where she's at. You know, a lot of talk about how much the lights are speeding up, and there, I think it's almost slowing you down, because if you're having to turn around to look at them, then you're not staying focused on where you're supposed to be. But you don't blame her, because she's trying to get a gauge on just where the record line is. 1 lap to go. At this point, it's a formality again, because we've already seen these last 2 laps of the K what she needs to do, and she's clearly running under that mark. So at this point, it's just how much can she break it by. And again, Hassan's mark, smashes the existing world record. Everybody knew that the Ethiopian trials were happening 2 days later. I don't know if anybody thought, hey, that's going to be a world record race. In retrospect, again, maybe instead of 255s for those opening Ks, drops them to 254s. I don't think Hassan lost it in the last K. She did plenty in this last K, and you can see she's completely going to the well here to squeeze everything out that she can, and she runs that 10-second negative split. I think the improvement would come earlier on, shaving a second or two off those earlier splits as opposed to closing faster, because 245 on the close is moving at this point. So here she is, 29 flat passes on the clock, and then she's going to cross the line 29:06 to break the world record, smash it by 11 seconds. And those of us who remember that Almaz Ayana race, that was a big jump forward in and of itself, that when she did that in Rio and doing that in a championship race and all that went along with that. So to see Hassan drop 11 seconds was pretty stunning. But again, that didn't last. That didn't last because 2 days later, we got Gidey running 5 seconds faster on the same track in Hengelo. So tremendous effort there by Hassan. Not one of the races that people are going to name as their favorite Sifan Hassan race of 2021. I just assuming, because there's so many other ones to choose from, and I'm guessing they're going to pick something from the Olympics or one of those battles that she had with Faith Kipyegon in the 1500. But I didn't want it to get lost in the shuffle of all that she's accomplished this year. And again, it just makes me wonder what's possible if you got these two on the track, not for a global title, but just with the sheer purpose of breaking the world record. How fast can they go? I think everybody assumes sub 29 at this point. But hey, who's going to go out and pace it? Where is it going to take place? All those questions remain. I would love to see it. But Sifan Hassan's 10K, again, don't let it get lost in the shuffle of a sensational year for her, Gidey, and all the women's distance runners that have just been knocking it out of the park this year in 2021. Well, that's it for this week's edition of the Race Breakdown. I'm Kevin Sully. Be sure to subscribe to the FloTrack YouTube page for more race breakdowns coming up.